Okay, let's continue. Passing arrays as parameters. Okay, in this example we're going to create a function, or a method rather, here. Private sub, it's going to be called this, and you can see the name right there. We put this in the beginning to begin the definition, and then we say that this method is going to take an argument, but the argument is not going to be a parameter or an input, but the input is not going to be like an integer or even a string. Those are some of the things we've been putting into methods up till now. But no, it's going to be this. It's going to be an array. So we're going to give this method, the parameter that we're going to give this method is going to be an array. Okay, and we have to, and this array is going to be an array of strings. So we're telling it all of that right here. So we're saying that we're going to pass it an array. We know it's an array because it has these brackets around it as a string. Or it has the brackets at the end of it, I should say. And don't forget, we already discussed what the by val means. Okay, so that should be clear enough. So it means we're not going to be changing. If this is defined anywhere else, it's not going to be affected by what happens in here. And then, okay, so this method will expect an array as its input. So if we use this method, we have to give it an array. So if you look up here in the code, this is after we're using the method now. Up here in the code, this is just an explanation down here. But we're using it here, and in other words, we're calling the method, and what are we giving it as its parameter? It's this thing, which is an array. We already defined this as an array, so it is an array. Okay, now let's go back again to this. So we're going to define a method like this, and here's the beginning of the definition. Has to have these at the beginning. And here we're going to say it takes a parameter, but the parameter, again, is going to be an array. Okay, so now we've said that. And now we have to say what this method is going to do. What this method is going to do. We just so far just said that it's going to take a parameter, and that parameter is going to be an array. So now we say what it's going to do. And it looks like it has a loop inside the method. So in other words, when you call this method, it's going to perform a loop. And what is that loop going to do? Well, first of all, that's a for each loop. And it says it's going to, the for each loop is going to access this array list. What array list? The parameter that we pass. Okay, so the method is going to take this some parameter, and this stands for that parameter. And so down here, it's saying this is what we're passing to the method. And what are we going to do? For each element as string in that method, we're going to do what? We're going to add it to our list friends list box. So we are passing an array as a parameter. So that's a little bit new for us. Okay, so here's what you're supposed to do. On the same form, in the array demo project, add another button control and set its name property to this one and its text property to arrays as parameters. And then double click this new button and add in the code here, clear list, and call this function, which we actually haven't defined yet. We just finished talking about it, but we didn't actually define it in our code yet, in our project yet. So anyway, call this function, which hasn't yet been defined, and call it with this parameter, which is the array that exists in your form already. And then we want to define this function, otherwise it wouldn't be a good idea to call it if we didn't define it somewhere. So we're going to define it here, like we just said, here, and all of this. And then what is this method going to do? I don't know if I called it a function. I should call it a method. What is this method going to do? Again, it's going to run a for each loop, and for each loops, in this case, this for each loop will access the elements in an array. What array? The array that we're giving to our method. And you can see the array that we're giving is up here. And what is it going to do? It's just going to add all of those elements to the list box. Okay, let's see what he says about this. The trick here is to tell the add items to list method that the parameter it's expecting is an array of type string. You do this by using empty parentheses like this here. So you get this. If you specify an array but don't define a size, which we didn't do here, you're telling Visual Basic 2010 that you don't know or care how big the array is. So we're not saying how big the array has to be. This method will work for any size array, which is okay, right? Because it's just doing a for each loop, so it will just continue through to the end of whatever size array we put in. That means that you can pass an array of any size through to this method. Okay? Okay, now just to prove that the array can be of any size, we're going to add more friends and see that it works. So you're going to go back to your demo project again, and you're going to add another button with this and this. You're going to double click the new button. You're going to have this, and you're going to have that, which was going to declare a new array that can take 2 elements here. And then we're going to assign those 2 elements, the 0th element and the first element, Elaine and Deborah. And now we're going to call the same method that we've already created. So we're going to be experimenting with this method. So we're going to, this button when we click it, this button when we click it is going to first call it like this. And so it's going to call the same array that we did originally. And so that should work. And that will add these items up to here, I guess, to the list box. But then we're going to call it again, and we're going to call it with an input of this array. And this array is only 2 items, but it still will work. So this illustrates the fact that up here, this is our definition of our method, that when we defined our method, we didn't say how big the array has to be. So that means that we're allowing arrays of any size. And so when we called the method the first time, we put in this array, which was of one size, and the second time we put in an array which was of a different size. And it functions both times, so it adds this stuff and then it adds this stuff. So he says, what you have done here is prove that the array you pass as a parameter does not have to be of a fixed size. You created a new array of size 2 and passed it through to the same method, the add items to list method, or add items to list function. I don't think I'd call that a function. I don't think we should call that a function, but okay, I'll just leave it. As you're writing the code, you can tell whether a parameter is an array type by looking for empty parentheses in the IntelliSense pop-up box. So they mean when you start typing, or if you just pass the mouse over it, it should come up. He says when you do that, not only are you informed by the IntelliSense that the array list is an array type, in other words, it's not an integer, it's not a double, it's an array, but also you see the data type of the array is string. So you can see that it's an array type and it's a string. Or rather, the elements are strings.